we even did a polygraph, and why am I still hurting? And he passed the polygraph.
Right. And I wanted to make sure that I treated everybody with respect. I explained everything to them in quite great detail, and then also that they understood everything about polygraph before we started.
As therapists who get protective of their clients,
Sure.
we want to make sure that we are placing them
You
in
bet.
not just, the most skilled, but someone who genuinely does this out of, respect for.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Therapist Take Podcast. We are back again to talk about polygraphs, and we have a special guest with us, so don't go anywhere. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Josh.
How are you today?
Good.
It's Friday,
I know, we made it.
my favorite day. Monday. Do you like Mondays, by the way?
I do, because it's meeting day. I feel like it
Really?
starts off, well, I think it starts off productive. I like
Yeah,
that
I do
feeling.
too.
Yeah.
I like. It feels like rejuvenated.
Yeah.
It's a new week.
Focused.
Carpe diem.
Carpe diem.
And Fridays weren't really all that thrilling for me after I had kids, because it's like I just got to go home and go to work.
Different version
Yeah.
of work.
So, but when we started doing this, I was like, I really look forward to Fridays now, just so we can have this 1 or 2 hours of
Blip.
just kind of,
Right.
debriefing and talking about really hard stuff.
I'll say it's not really debriefing. I think it's turning up the intensity.
I know, a little bit. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But so we, I think it was 2 episodes ago, right? We talked about why we stopped using the polygraph, and we decided that what would be a good idea is if we actually brought a polygraph examiner on. And so I emailed our good buddy David Otwell, and he agreed to come do this episode where we can actually hear his perspective of it on why he's so confident in them. And I remember talking with him, years ago since we have used them as part of our betrayal trauma couple recovery process, and sitting down with him, and it was his confidence that kept me in it, because I really just didn't understand how it all worked.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And but as we talked about on that podcast, there were some reasons why we decided to go ahead and not do it, but we have given his name out many times.
Yeah, I think it's important to clarify. We don't do it in-house as part of
Right.
our process, but we still have lots of clients that want it
Right.
for themselves, and then we try to give them
Right.
trusted
Right.
referrals, and David is one of them.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot to talk about with him
do.
today, and so let me cover some housekeeping things, and then give the episode breakdown, and then we will introduce our guest. And so, just as always, we ask everybody who's watching this to please subscribe to our channel if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on our webpage, actually, to head on over to YouTube. Or if you're not on YouTube and you're watching this somewhere, head on over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel, because it actually helps the algorithms and to get the information that we're putting out there into the eyes and ears of viewers. And so, but if you're listening to this on the audio platforms, please give us a 5-star review. Write something nice if you want to. So stop what you're doing. It takes 1 second. Stop what you're doing. Go hit that 5 stars, and then come back and listen away. So, okay. The other thing is that we usually try to put lots of resources in the show notes. That's going to, if you're listening to the live version of this, if you come back to the version that I've edited up, there's going to be a lot more resources than what you have in there right now. And any other kind of links that we talk about in the duration of this podcast, we'll try to put in those show notes. So the episode breakdown. So we're going to start with just talking with David about, just giving him an opportunity to dispel any myths about polygraph exams. Then we're going to move into just a brief discussion about science and efficacy, all that boring stuff.
But it's important.
Kind of nerding out a little bit.
But you love it.
I think you love it.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
And then we're going to talk about, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about David's experience in doing polygraphs as part of betrayal trauma couple recovery. So that's our breakdown.
Great.
So I'll introduce our guest. Our guest is David Otwell, and I'm going to kind of break pattern here and just read directly from my notes here. We're thrilled to welcome David Otwell, owner of Truth Verification Polygraph Services, to Therapist Take. With 34 years of law enforcement experience, including work with the FBI on national security matters, David has conducted nearly 3,000 polygraph exams and testified as an expert witness. Trained by the renowned Cleve Baxter. David is a leader in the field, serving as vice chair of the Oklahoma Polygraph Examiners Board. His experience in truth verification and dedication to integrity make him an invaluable voice in today's conversation on polygraphs in betrayal trauma recovery. David, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah,
I'll go through all that.
A lot of stuff.
Did I capture it with the?
You did. You got most of
Okay,
it.
all right.
Okay.
You have a quite an impressive resume, to be honest with you.
Appreciate that.
So I know you have like a lot of years in law enforcement. What about doing polygraphs? How many years you been doing that?
Yeah, I've been doing polygraphs since 2010.
Okay.
So, and like I say, during that time, I started polygraph in law enforcement. And primarily in law enforcement, we use those for twofold. One is pre-employment polygraph exams for new applicants. We always want to make sure we're going to get the best of the best. To eliminate people who have done things in their past that would be something we would not want to bring into law enforcement.
Right.
The others could be criminal polygraphs. We did a lot of criminal polygraphs to determine if somebody did what they're being accused of. It could be
Okay.
a rape or a robbery or bank robbery, whatever. And then we use them also as internal failure polygraphs. So if there's some kind of internal issue, amongst an employee, we would utilize that for those as well. So my experience started in law enforcement. That's where most, actually, if you look at it, about 95% of your polygraph examiners, at least here in Oklahoma, learned in law enforcement. That's where they started.
And you told me you just came from a board meeting. So what are you talking about? What does a board of polygraph
Yeah, you
examiners
bet.
talk
Yeah.
about?
So if you look at the state of Oklahoma, we are a licensing body. So in
Okay.
Oklahoma, we have to be licensed to be polygraph examiners.
Okay.
All the surrounding states, other than I think New Mexico, require or don't require a license.
Oh, really?
Which is kind of
Okay.
sad, truthfully.
Yeah.
And you want somebody, if you're looking for somebody that's a polygraph examiner, you want somebody that's specifically licensed,
Right.
trained with a very, very good school that you've gone to. You want them to be insured as well. So anyway.
So
you
is that
bet.
questions people should be asking when they call to looking for a polygraph examiner? I mean, or do you guys just volunteer that information from the get-go?
If they ask us. So basically, I would definitely say be licensed, right?
Right.
A lot of people will try to go out of state. Sometimes those polygraph exams may be cheaper, but they're not using a licensed polygraph examiner. I would say you want somebody as a part or a member of the American Polygraph Association, the Association of Police Polygraphists. These are organizations that basically require you to do certain things during that time as a polygraph examiner. So using their techniques, certified, validated techniques, things of that nature.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that it's a rigorous process and
Yeah.
oversight.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Just out of curiosity, do you guys have polygraph jokes and stuff that you in-house? That I'm just wondering what it's like being we know what it's like being in a room full of therapists,
Yeah.
and we have our little therapist joke. Do you have how many polygraph examiners does it take to change a light bulb?
No, I've
okay.
never had something like that, but I did have one of my previous detectives that worked for me. He basically scrolled a deal out in wood, and it basically said, "If you lie, you fry."
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't have that at the office. Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
Okay.
that'd be,
But now, when I
that'd
was
be
at the
terrifying.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, you definitely don't want something like that. But he thought it was a joke, and he thought, that if you lied, you fried, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That,
you
that
don't.
makes sense. That's the inside
To clear that
stuff.
up, you don't fry.
You don't fry.
Right. Yeah, that's funny. Again, we really appreciate you being willing to do this, and I want to ask my question. I've been itching to ask you since you've been here
Oh,
today, but I've been
yes.
resisting because I want you to answer it here and not off camera. But so you told me that you listened to the episode that we did to episode 44 on
did.
why we stopped.
I
I
did.
just wanted to get your kind of your general impression of what you were thinking as you were listening to it, or some of the thoughts that you remember.
Well, I guess one impression, it was very, very good. My second impression is how do I try to get them back to using a polygraph examiner again? That's
love
a big
it.
thing, right?
Yeah.
So, I work with a lot of other therapists, and some in-house, some would be, they just, kind of like you guys now, will send somebody to me to basically be polygraphed about their history, or, are they cheating, in a relationship, whatever. But yeah, the podcast that you guys had was really, really good. I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah. I'm wondering. I'm open-minded. If you can, maybe you'll be able to convince us to come back home.
You bet.
You know?
Come
Hope
back
so.
home, Josh.
Or at least
Or
you
the-
continue to
your
refer me.
pro-
That's
we're
always
your
good
pro-
as
we
well.
Yes,
We're
we
your
do.
prodigal
We
children
trust
right
you.
now.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, like we said in our previous episode or 2 episodes ago, and so I hope people will go back and listen to that. That we're not anti-polygraph. You know, we just with our model we couldn't, uh, uh, didn't feel right about with what we were trying to achieve with how we do trust building and things that was the most productive way. But I've always said, and as we said in that podcast, like I've always felt like I've left room to reintroduce it in some way
Well,
if,
yeah, and I think we do.
yeah,
I think we do. And I also think that
Right.
the key of any good therapy is fit. And
Yeah.
so for, any of us to say we always or never, that should be very, very small things we have in that category. So we need to
Right.
think about what fits for our clients and
Right.
polygraph
True. I agree
fits
with
and
you.
how that polygraph can
Yeah.
fit.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So let's start with talking about the myths, and you'll
Yeah.
know more about. I mean, I can think of different perceptions that I have or anything, but what are like some of the common myths that you're
Oh, I
faced with that
think-
you have to kind of tell people that's not really how it is?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
I think one of the big questions we were asked, are polygraphs used in court? Okay. The ideal word is no. I've testified 4 times in court, both in civil court and criminal court. But I'm trying to think. I've never had one where I talked about the results of the polygraph. It could be either a confession of a polygraph. Actually, I take that back. I polygraphed 1 time to the results. It was what we call a stipulated test. Stipulated test, you have the prosecution and you have the defense. And they both agree that they will use a polygraph examiner to determine if their client, or the defendant in this case, is being truthful or deceptive regarding that issue that they're being
Right,
charged
right, right.
with. And in that case, this person unfortunately did fail the polygraph. And the stipulation was if he did fail the polygraph, he was going to serve time in jail. If he passed the polygraph, he wasn't going to go to jail and the charges would be dropped.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was like one example. The other were testified in Woods County. So in Woods County Court, up near the Panhandle. And it was regarding a person that I did a polygraph on. And so instead of the results of the polygraph being provided, I talked about everything that was provided. Basically what that person told me, really everything about that other than the actual polygraph results.
Okay. So
Okay.
your interactions, et cetera, but
Yes,
not just the
exactly. What
results
that
of
person
it.
told me,
Okay.
things
Right.
of that nature.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that is something I hear people ask a lot. Are they, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right.
I think another one would be how accurate are polygraphs? The
Right.
myth is, some people say they're 100%. They're not. There's really
Right.
nothing out there that's 100%. There's no medical instrument out there that I know of that's 100%. But polygraph is very accurate if used correctly, and you've got somebody experienced using their proper
Yeah.
question technique, things of that nature. They're very, very accurate. Accuracy rate for a polygraph can be anywhere, and it depends on what kind of test you're running. So if you're running a specific issue test, and we've talked about this before,
I
it's a
remember,
single issue
yeah.
test. Single issue test, you're focusing that polygraph on one thing.
Right.
It's not just one question, but it's
Right.
one thing that person is trying to prove either they didn't do it or the other person's trying to prove that he did do it or she did do it. That polygraph, a specific issue test, I always tell everybody it's around a 92 to 93% accuracy rate test. There are some validated studies say they're anywhere from about 85 to 95. I think 95, in my opinion, probably goes a little too high, but I think they're around a 92 to 93% accuracy
Yeah.
rate test.
Pretty
A mixed issue
significant,
test
though,
is a
yeah.
little bit different. Mixed issue, you're looking at a lower validated rate. So you're looking at it probably around anywhere from 77 to about 83 to 85,
Okay.
something like that.
Okay.
I always tell everybody, if you really want a good specific polygraph exam, I would go and use a single issue test because it's more accurate and there's less inconclusive as well.
Yeah.
And we're getting into our second point on the science and efficacy of that, and I agree. Like in conversations Carrie and I have had, and I think we even mentioned this on the podcast, that if we were to reintroduce it, it would be the single issue.
Right.
Because, and I remember you telling me about that years ago when we were meeting about and how it changes the reliability based upon how many questions are being
Right.
asked. Now, I want to come back to that in just a second, but real quickly, like to kind of wrap up the myths thing, you mentioned the myth of some people think it's 100% reliable, right? But I think there's the other side of that myth too, where some people think it's completely unreliable. And I think kind of what you're saying, all the things that you just said, kind of dispels that it's actually highly reliable.
Yeah.
even if you think of it from like what's the there's a single issue. What do you call the second one?
Mixed issue test.
Mixed issue
Yeah,
test.
yeah.
So in other words, when you're asking 2 or 3 questions, basically instead of just
Liability
one,
rate goes down. You bet.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and you're talking about 75 to 80 something accuracy. That's still pretty dang accurate,
Yeah.
right? In terms of like science,
Right.
right? But
Right.
but when you're talking about something that a lot of people feel like is their whole life, the thing I'm putting on the line here, that might not be as comforting
Right.
as
Yeah.
92, 93%,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, there's websites out there that talk bad about Polygraph, and then there's websites that talk good about Polygraph. What I always tell everybody, if you want to learn more about Polygraph, go to the American Polygraph Association website, right? They have everything in there, validated studies. You can read all of the stuff and talk about, read about Polygraph and basically how it works.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I want to
great.
also say too, your website was, I spent a lot of time on it before you came in today, and there's a lot of great resources. I would encourage everybody, if we could just put his name bar up there. Again, it has his website on there. The people to go check that out because, especially like your blogs, you have some nice blogs on there. I think you even have one about betrayal, trauma,
Right.
infidelity.
I have
Right.
clients
People
that
can
have
read
it.
about.
Yep.
And just to use that website as a good resource as well. And so I want to talk to you. I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the setup in terms of like the questions and things. So the first
bet.
thing I think to recognize is that when you say a single issue, that doesn't mean somebody's walking in and they're going to get one. You're just going to ask them one
Yeah,
question,
no.
right? There's a whole process you
Yes,
go
there is.
through, right?
Yes,
Would
there
you
is.
kind of
Yeah,
explain
you
what
bet.
that looks like?
Yeah, so when you look at a polygraph, when somebody comes in, almost everybody that comes in, they're nervous. My job as a polygraph examiner is to calm their nerves, ease their nerves, make their physiology actually get back down to where it needs to be before we start a polygraph.
Yeah.
A lot of people think as soon as they walk in the door, we're getting started on a polygraph. It doesn't work that way. We're going to basically probably sit there, we're going to go over a lot of things, and I'll talk about those, but for at least an hour. We're going to go over the polygraph consent form, which is it's a common word for polygraph bill of rights. So the state of Oklahoma has certain laws, rules, and regulations that we as polygraph examiners have to abide by, but there are also certain rights given to somebody taking a polygraph. I will go over all of those polygraph bill of rights. And you have the right to not take a polygraph, right? You can stop a polygraph at any point. We go over each question before we even start a polygraph. A lot of people think, all right, I don't know what they're going to ask me, but I'm just going to sit in this chair and just answer questions.
Right,
That's
right.
not the case. If I did that, every question that was asked of that person, their physiology would change. We don't want that. We want to make sure they understand what that question is, what it means, and then also those questions are all a yes or no. There's no maybes, there's no possibilities, there's no I could have, but I can't remember. It's going to be a yes or no. These are very, very simplified questions for that person taking that polygraph.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's real quickly just tell everybody how the results come out, because they're basically like 3 types of results,
Yeah, you
right?
bet. Yeah.
And-
So you've got deception indicated, no deception indicated, or inconclusive, or what we call no opinion, right?
Okay.
We can't make an opinion if that person was
Right.
truthful or deceptive. It falls within a range in this numerical scoring system that we have, right? So we have a numerical scoring system. Actually, was invented by Cleve Baxter, where I went to school.
Okay.
And this numerical scoring system is when you are scoring those charts, you're looking for those physiological responses and or no response, and you're giving them a score. Well, based off this numerical scoring tool, if they are within a certain range on either side, if it's a +3 or greater or a -3 or greater, it falls within either no deception indicated, but if it falls within the middle, like a +2 to a -2, it's inconclusive. We would have to do additional testing to try to basically resolve that specific issue.
I see.
Okay.
I see.
Yeah, let me expand on
And
that just a
so-
little bit. So when you look at polygraph, the validity of polygraph determines on a lot of different factors. It could be the examiner's conducting the test. Let's say you have a
Right.
brand new examiner that doesn't have a lot of experience. I'm not talking bad about a new examiner. They have to start somewhere,
Sure.
right? Just like you
Sure.
guys started
Right,
as
exactly.
therapists. So the question formulation they make might not be the questions that should be used in that polygraph. It could be the equipment they're using. We used the brand new LX6 software, was through Lafayette, and then the algorithms that we utilize as well. So we want to confirm our hand scores with algorithms. What algorithms are, they're called scoring algorithms. They will look at all the data from those charts, and it will make an opinion as well if that person was being truthful deceptive, or if it falls within that inconclusive range, right? So we have backups to basically validate our decision in regard to that person's polygraph, right? So it all depends on a lot of factors in regard to that.
Yeah, those are a lot of
Depends
factors.
on if they're on medications, illegal drugs, psychological disorders. There's a lot of things that can affect a polygraph. There's certain medications that change our physiology, right? Either lower our respiration, it could be raising our respiration, it could be illegal drugs. There's a lot of things. So at the very beginning, we talk about their medical background. We want to make sure that there's nothing that would potentially affect the outcome of that polygraph, because there's a lot of things that can. I've had people come in before that were on cocaine. I've had people come in before that were on numerous, it could be anti-anxiety medications, a lot, not just one, but it could be several, what we call
dose.
polydrug use, right? Things of that nature. So these are things that we would determine right off the bat if we're going to run a polygraph or not. We have to make sure that that person's physiology is ideal for a polygraph. The other thing that we talk about is this is where a lot of people finally relax. It's running a practice test. We always run a practice test. This practice test not only gets that person familiarized with how to sit still, how to realize there's 25 seconds between questions, how to answer the questions, all of those type of things. But it also gives me what their physiology looks like before we start. So I'll be able to see what that baseline looks like. I'll be able to see what a truthful response looks like, and I'll be able to see what a lie response looks like. Because I'll have them lie about a number or something very simple. So I'll be able to see what their physiology looks like before we even start.
Okay.
It
Yeah, so
really
what
helps
is the
in the long run.
physiology that those instruments
Yeah,
are
so we're
measuring?
recording respiration, blood pressure, and galvanic skin response. So when you look at that, we're looking at all those physiological changes and or no changes.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. Let's go back to the practice test I was just talking about. I will write down a list of numbers. I'll leave one of those spots blank. It could be the 3, 5, whichever number. I decide that day to leave blank. And there won't be a number listed there. I'll put that pad in front of them. I'll say, hey, what number's missing? Oh, easy, 3. I said, okay, I'll have you write the number 3 in that circle. And I'll put that away for a few minutes. And I'm going to start talking about how the polygraph works, what the components do, what they're utilized, all these different things. And about maybe 10 minutes later, I'll ask them, I said, hey, what number did you write on that piece of paper a while ago? And they're going to go, well, I wrote the number 3. I said, how do you know you wrote the number 3? Well, I remembered I wrote it. And I said, and it's stored right here in the cortex part of the brain. And they're going, oh, yeah, it's stored. I said, and I always talk about, what do we remember the most in life? We remember the good things, and unfortunately, we remember those bad things. Why do we remember those? Well, a lot of the times we remember some of those bad things so we don't do it later in life as well.
Survive, yeah.
We remember the good things, so we do some of those things later in life. And so when we start that polygraph, we're going to have them lie about that number 3 that they just wrote. I'll have them be truthful on the numbers they did not write. And I am looking and watching their physiology live to determine and make sure that their physiology is ideal. What really works good is after I get done, I turn the screen over to them normally, and I'll say, look at that number 3. I want you to tell me what the difference between that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. What is the difference between that number 3 response versus those other numbers? And they'll go, oh my gosh, my blood pressure skyrocketed up, right? My galvanic skin response went up. So is there anything else that changed? No, everything else stayed even. I said, that's because you were being truthful. When we lie, our physiology changes, right? Because it's not something that's normal for us to lie.
Sure. Yeah, again, it's an industry to try and learn about, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Carrie, tell David kind of what you've experienced or we've experienced from partners where the unfaithful partner, they went ahead and did the polygraph, and some of the experience they have and still not trusting it. And
Well, I think
to
that
see if we can talk about
Well-
how do we what can we do about that?
I think we talked about this on our other episode, but I do think it's interesting to bring David in on this. I think that what happens a lot of times for the betrayed partner is that, of course, they want the person who sits for the polygraph to come back as truthful, right? Or not deceptive.
Right.
But even when that happens, there's still that voice in their head of, yeah, but if anyone could, and this is the language, right, could trick the polygraph exam, it's my,
Partner, because
Yeah.
they feel so fooled and
right.
yeah.
We get that all the time.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
how do you go about addressing that?
Number one, you're not tricking a polygraph. There's been studies.
Right,
There's
yeah.
been the CIA did a study years and years ago to try to trick a polygraph.
Oh,
right?
really? Oh, wow.
Nowadays, with the equipment that we have, what's been incorporated in polygraph over the last several years is motion sensor pads. If you move, does your physiology change? Yes,
Yes,
it
of
most definitely
course.
does, right?
Yeah.
If you nod your head, your carotid artery will be constricted or open wide up. So all of these physiological responses can and will change if
Yeah.
there's movement. So
Okay.
there's motion sensor pads for feet, hands, and
Wow.
where you sit on.
Okay.
Our job as a polygraph examiner is to run the most accurate polygraph for that person. I don't care what that polygraph's for. I want to make sure I'm going to run the most accurate polygraph, right?
Yeah.
So motion sensors are a huge part of
Okay.
it, right? So if somebody moves, it can affect the outcome of a polygraph. There's a lot of different things. There's medications, things of that nature. And actually, when we tell people that, there are people that will try to take something. Or
wondered.
they'll get online and look at some websites. I won't give them any credibility, but there's
Okay.
some websites out there that'll talk negatively and maybe what you can do to try to, pass a polygraph.
Right, right. Oh, I've seen them.
You're not going to do that,
Okay,
right?
okay.
And it describes a plethora of different
Yeah.
things that you could do. Well,
Right.
we as polygraph examiners go through that training,
You know
right?
that, right.
We know what they're going to try to do, so we know what they're trying to do, and we call them out on it.
Right.
And if they continue, we're done with the polygraph.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's a reality, right?
Right.
There's going to be
So-
people try to beat a polygraph.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
and I do think that appeals to the intellectual side of people, like they understand intellectually. Now, one thing we've talked about a lot is that one reason why this is actually a big reason why we decided and kind of made that decision of like, you know what, let's put a pause on the polygraph exams on our end, even though we still refer people out for them.
Right.
Is that the betrayal trauma injury is not an intellectual injury; it's an emotion land.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So the part that's screaming out at them, saying this is bullshit, is that emotional part of them that is looking up at their intellectual brain, saying, I don't believe it. Like, I don't believe it, right?
Right.
And I'm wondering, like, if you have a way, and if not, maybe we can try to talk about a way to help appeal to the emotional side of them where the injury is, that this is a good tool
Yeah.
to use. And yes, it's hard when all you've received lately is deception, and then you're hearing some strange man who's on a machine saying he's telling the truth, maybe for the first time. That's got to be difficult, right?
Yeah, another misconception is, do we fail more than we pass? No, we pass more than we fail. So in your line of business,
Right.
what are we trying to do? We're trying to get that person to open up. We want to make sure that everything they've done that has caused that betrayal in their marriage,
Yeah.
provide all that information, disclose to it. And then you're basically doing what? You're trying to continue and trying to help that relationship out later down the road, right?
Right.
So me as a polygraph examiner, it's the same thing. If I'm doing a pre-employment polygraph, what am I looking for? I'm making sure that they're being truthful in everything that we talk about. Everything is that pre-polygraph disclosure form that they fill out. Could be every question known to mankind. It could be criminal history, that kind of thing. If they fail to disclose to one of those things, and that question's asked of them, they're going to fail that polygraph, right? Now, and I tell people, as long as you're truthful, you're not going to have a problem. It really eases their nerves, eases their tensions. And it
Yeah.
kind of goes back to building that good rapport with them at the very beginning before we can start, right? Because you have to really build that rapport. If you just go in,
Oh, yeah.
sit there, we're going to do
Ask
this polygraph.
questions.
These are the questions. You're not going to get a good polygraph.
Right.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think, when you're talking about the process of helping the person that you're about to examine understand how it all works,
Yeah.
do you ever think that it could be helpful to do that pre-exam on the partner so they can see how it works? Like is that something you would do?
We used to do that.
Really?
So yeah, we don't
Okay.
do it anymore. I'll explain why. So infidelity polygraphs or family-related issues.
Okay.
We used to let the other partner show up at least for the introduction part, which is about an hour.
Okay.
And then we would have them go out and sit in the lobby, and we'd run the test, bring them back in. Oh my gosh. I'm sure you see it a little bit as well, but the tensions get really, really high
yeah, yeah.
depending on the outcome of that polygraph
Yeah,
result.
yeah.
I've had fights. I've had to call the police. I've
Right.
had people leave their spouse at our office before, especially long distance. I think one was from Pauls Valley,
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
and they left their spouse there. We do not let both of them show up anymore.
Okay.
What we do is after that test is done, before we even score those charts, I'll get the second party on the line. It's either the husband, wife, or boyfriend, girlfriend, and then I'll have them on basically just on speakerphone.
Okay.
And it takes me about that 5 to 10 minutes, sometimes longer, to score those charts. After I get those results, I will go over the results with both at the exact same time. That's another thing. A lot of people think, well, you're going to tell that person, if they passed or failed before you even talk to me. No. That's why I get you on speakerphone. And that way you know that there's nothing discussed after that polygraph until those results are provided, and they're provided to both.
Yeah,
But to the answer, I used to do that.
Well, no, I'm talking about like actually hooking the partner up.
I've never done that.
Yeah, like
but-
just so they can see how
Yeah.
it works with their own body.
Yeah, you bet. I've never done that.
I don't know if there is a way to resolve the emotional problem that we're talking about, because I kind of think in some ways it's necessary. Like, it doesn't behoove them to believe someone who has deceived them that badly.
Right.
So even when the polygraph says it's telling the truth, to not believe it is, I think, would probably be more of the appropriate response than
Yeah.
to believe it, but for safety reasons, right?
Right.
Like, you're just not going
Oh,
to go,
yeah,
well, okay,
huge.
well, the exam said you're telling the truth, so I guess all of a sudden you're a truth teller, a truth teller,
Yeah, right.
right?
Yeah.
But it does kind of, I think, challenge the mind to figure out how to make sense of what's happening. Like, when I'm convinced there's more information, this person's going to drop more information on me, and what do I do with that
Yeah.
fear,
Yeah.
And some other things that we could do too is, like, I mean, we could have them do multiple polygraphs, like, like if you didn't believe it this time, like, you can have them do it again at some point. But I think it still leaves them, they're still going to be left in that boat.
I don't think
facing
there's
their
any
emotions,
perfect
right?
way. I think it's like, learning how to dive or something. You can't just watch diving videos. You have to
Right.
do it. Like,
Right.
so
Yeah.
at some point, if this couple is going to, go to the lengths of a disclosure and a polygraph, there's still no replacement for just every day saying,
Right.
okay, I'm going to choose to acknowledge my hurt and my wounds, my trust
Yeah.
issues, and work on them.
Right.
That's why people don't come in for
Yeah.
us one time, Josh, right?
Right.
They keep working. But I have had partners, clients that were the partners, the ones who were betrayed, and they have been able to call you and you talk them and answer those
bet.
questions or
Yeah.
read your website.
And I'm happy to answer any of those questions.
And that's what everyone has kind of
Right.
said. That really does help. I mean, it may
Right.
not remove what we're talking about, the heart
Yeah.
of this emotional wound, but it
Right.
really does. I do think it does something to that emotion of like,
Right.
okay, at least this is, science backed.
Right.
There's a process. This person's experience. This isn't
Right.
willy-nilly. I can at least have some confidence in this process.
Right.
And be more boundaried that it's the person I don't trust,
Yeah,
and not
exactly.
the process, right?
Right,
And I do think
right.
we can alleviate that with having high quality polygraph examiners, but even high quality mental health therapists that have a procedure of treatment and recovery that's also science based,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
what I think we do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just talking with you, I'm sitting there, my wheels are turning about how do we work this back in.
I can see him turning.
Well,
over
just
there.
because, I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about, like, what I'm trying to imagine it kind of play out, and like what hiccups do we run into. And I'm reminded of a story I heard a friend of mine tell about a friend of his. I'm probably going to butcher it, but it'll make the point. But like, this person apparently had like a heart condition, had it for years. Could live life with it for the most, a good, wasn't going to shorten their life very much, but it just really affects quality of life, right? And there was a surgery that can be done to fix it, beyond like, the typical risks of any type of major surgery is not really considered a fatal surgery. Like, it's not that type of risk.
Right.
It's either going to fix it or it's not. That's
Right.
kind of the deal,
I agree.
And this person didn't do it for like 20 years until the quality of life got of such where they're like, all right, I want to do it. And they did it, and it fixed it. And then when he asked him, like, why did it take you so long to do this? He said, because I knew that was it. Like, if I had done it and it didn't fix it, that was it. There's nothing else after that.
Right.
There's no like hope for fixing it. So it's like, by not doing the surgery and choosing to let his quality of life fade, it was the hope that he held on to. And in this case, fortunately, the surgery, resolved the problem. But I think what happens a lot of time, to kind of relate that to how this works with polygraphs or disclosures in general, is that it doesn't fix it. Like, it's like this is a big just the disclosure process, and especially if you include a polygraph involved with it, this is a big effort,
Yes.
and it's probably one of the hardest things our couples go through
Yes.
in recovery work. And then at the end, it didn't fix it because that relationship. I don't know how much I've talked to you about this, but I'm sure you're aware because you do so many of these. But that relationship, in order to work, it's going to have to rebuild in a different way.
Yeah, it's almost like I would say probably 80% of my clients, the other side, the person that didn't take the polygraph, are elated that their husband or wife passed polygraph. And then you're going to get 20%. It may be the same in your industry. I don't know. That's just not happy. They don't think it was good. Don't think it's going to resolve their situation. And it's almost like therapy. If it's not going to help everybody,
Right.
Polygraph
Right.
is not going to help everybody. I tell everybody, unless you want a good polygraph exam to basically prove to your wife or whoever, if he doesn't want to do it, I can't make him do it.
For sure.
And so we tell everybody that.
Right.
So we always want to make sure you are both on the same sheet of music, basically.
Right.
And I always want to talk to both sides. Of course, I've always got the one inside the office.
Right.
The other one I want to know too. I've done polygraphs where either husband or wife didn't want me to talk to their spouse. Okay. Well, when we conduct that polygraph, these are the issues that person is wanting to cover. And they weren't the issues she or he wanted, the other half. And then it's a big mess all over again. And that person just wasted, $650 or $550, that kind of thing. And it doesn't help anything.
Right.
So if you want to do it right, you've got that. You guys use that triangle.
Yeah.
I know you don't do it that way anymore, but it was a triangle, right? You had the therapist, you had the person that was betrayed, and then you have the polygraph examiner. So it's all three of you working together, try to
Right.
get that situation resolved, or try to make that relationship hopefully get better later down the road.
Right.
Yeah.
And then some of the things that I talk about is there are some relationships, a wife wanting to know everything about this person's sexual history, right? And I had one guy that was, I think, late 50s. And I'm going, that is not going to be where you can go with a polygraph. Why? Are you going to remember everything you did from about the age of 14 or 15 all the way where you're at today
Right.
at 59 or 60?
Right.
Yeah.
No. And you're going to have that doubt in your head, which is going to cause you to potentially fail a polygraph, right? I would suggest never going back very far. 5 years, maybe 7 years is about the furthest
Okay.
distance really you should probably
Right.
go.
Okay.
And you have to make sure that you understand that this is going to be everything that you know you've done, right? It could be strip
Right.
bars, it could be solicitation with, prostitute, whatever it is, right? But you have to make sure that as you provide that disclosure, you're providing everything and that there's nothing left out.
Right.
If there's a doubt in your mind, or let's just say you are leaving something out, that's all you're going to be thinking about, which will cause you to fail a polygraph.
Right.
I want everybody to pass.
Yeah.
I want everybody to pass.
Sure.
Yeah.
That way we know
Yeah.
that they're being truthful to their partner
Yeah.
about their past sexual history.
Sure.
So you've seen how and I'm sure you've worked with other counselors too,
Yeah.
where and how we do the therapeutic disclosure.
Yep.
So if we did it that way, like would a single issue question be something like, did everything you disclose on your disclosure accurate truth,
Yeah.
and that's your knowledge, or is that
Yeah,
one
we don't use those anymore. So years ago, we used to use those. We called those statement tests, statement polygraphs.
Oh, okay.
It's like everything you wrote in your disclosures, everything true and accurate, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Are you hiding anything that you did not put in your disclosure? Something of that nature,
Right.
right? Well, you're focusing on a multitude of things.
Oh,
Those
okay.
aren't validated testing techniques. Years ago, we used them, right? I'll be honest. Most
Yeah.
examiners did use those.
Right.
We don't use them now. We want to make sure that person, we can formulate like 3 questions. There's some examiners that do 4. I won't run 4 specific questions. It degrades that test more and more and more.
Okay.
4 is the max, number 1. 3 is the max that I'll do. But if you use more than 4, your results even go down less. The reliability of that test goes down less.
Okay.
Your inconclusive rate really rises as
Okay.
well. So when you look at that, we're going to take bits and pieces out of that statement. We're going to test them. So I'll give you an example. It could be since 2020, while being married to Becky, let's say, have you ever had did you have physical sexual contact with any other woman? Something like that. Physical sexual contact covers a lot.
Yeah.
Touching, feeling, fondling, kissing, and of course oral,
Right.
whatever, right?
Right.
So when you look at those type of things, it's going to cover everything that person could have done with another female during that time frame. That would be ideal, right?
Okay.
You don't want to make something that's ballooned all the way back to 30, 40 years. I've had people call me. I want to know everything. I've had
Right.
couples that are married 40 years. And I
Yeah.
said, unfortunately, you don't want that test. It's not
Okay.
a good validated testing.
Good validated test,
No,
right?
you
So
want
if
to
You
make
may
it-
want it, but you won't get a
yeah,
good
you may
valid
want
test.
it, but it's
Yeah.
not going to be good.
Okay.
Because normally everybody doubts. If they're going back that far, oh gosh, did I remember it? They're going to doubt themselves.
Okay.
So it's going
Right.
to cause them to fail that polygraph.
Sure.
I don't want that.
Right.
And I'll
Right.
explain it to them, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we
And,
wanna
and
make
if
sure
you
we're
pick
not-
up on that in the middle of an exam, you would you just stop the exam and say like, I can tell you're kind of
No, normally during, yeah, you can do that. So
Yeah.
if their physiology is really changing, rolling, this is somebody could be not focusing completely,
Right.
could be maybe intentionally focusing on something specific. Yeah, there's times that we would stop a test and say, hey, okay, what are you thinking about here? Let's make sure, is there anything that you're thinking about? Is there something that you failed to disclose? If there is, let's talk about it now. And let's add it to the list, and then we'll restart that polygraph. And I've had several of those where they go, okay, yeah, I did do this. Like I had one, I was doing a polygraph for a doctor, her husband, right? And he done some things in his past. I won't go into what they were, but he did some really bad things in his past. And there was one little thing that he did not want to disclose to. He provided a pretty large disclosure, one thing. And this one thing was burning at him. And it was hurting him, actually.
Right.
And, I mean, he was having large responses on that, specific relevant question that we're focusing on. And so I stopped the test. I said, all right, what's going on here? And he just sat there for a minute, kind of put his head down, kind of like what they do probably for you guys as well. And, okay, there's one thing I didn't talk about. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's get it on the table. And I'm nice about it. I'm really nice about it. So let's get it on the table. Let's rerun that polygraph so we can show to your wife or your husband that everything's good. You passed that polygraph. Now, that one little nugget's going to be provided to their spouse, of course.
Yeah.
And that does hurt, right?
Yeah,
Because you're
yeah.
not providing that to them. So when I talk to couples, I tell them, make sure that there's nothing that you've left out. One little thing can cause you to fail that polygraph.
right.
That full disclosure, and you don't have any doubt in your mind, you're going to be good.
Yeah.
Okay.
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 That's really good.
Yeah.
And something I think is worth noting too that we were talking about right before we went live is you've done a lot more betrayal trauma type polygraphs maybe than what people would think a
Right.
polygraph examiner would do,
Yeah.
right? You've
Right.
done a lot
True,
of them,
true.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and so I think hopefully people listening to this can tell that he's not just speaking to criminal polygraphs here. He's
Right.
actually done a crap ton of polygraphs working with betrayal trauma and infidelity, sex addiction.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want people to recognize too, and this is something I always tell my clients when I recommend you, and this is honestly, David, this is probably why I only recommend you,
Right.
is because you're so nice. And I
appreciate
remember how you engaged with our clients. They'd come out, whether they passed or not, they never had a complaint one about you. That he was super nice, he was not judgmental, nothing like
Right.
they would think of.
Right.
I think they
Right.
kind of think of polygraph examiners as the,
Judge,
get
jury,
interrogate,
yeah,
these
sure.
these
Oh,
these
yeah.
cops that are going to interrogate you and judge you and hook you up to these wires and just so they can throw the book at
Yeah,
you.
they've
type
already got a
thing, right?
preconceived notion.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
briefly talked about that at the very beginning. So when I first got into law enforcement, it was like that. They yelled, screamed, hit the table, whatever. Polygraph is not like that, right? So when I got the opportunity to go to polygraph school, I looked back at my previous polygraphs because I've had to take a polygraph, especially with the FBI, every 4 years, 4 to 5 years to maintain my security clearance. And I wanted to make sure that I treated everybody with respect. I explained everything to them in quite great detail, and then also that they understood everything about polygraph before we started. If there's one doubt in their mind that they didn't learn everything about polygraph that day, it's going to doubt them, right? We want to make sure we provide everything to them and make sure you're building that rapport with them. If you don't have a good rapport with that person, you're not going to run a good polygraph.
Yeah.
That's just short and simple.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much
I
for doing
know.
this.
Thank
There's so
you.
much.
I've learned so much.
Yeah. I hope that I think this is going to be a really valuable episode
I do too.
for people, for our clients, our future clients. And that way, I can say, like, before you call David, go listen to this podcast. You can actually see him to kind of,
Yeah.
dispel any kind of preconceived notions that they might
bet.
have. Because, it's not, what I would say is, it's not your job to judge them, make judgments. I mean, I think you probably typically know you don't know the whole story about what's going on. Like you have a job to do and you do it well.
Yeah.
And for a law enforcement guy, to be honest with you, you're pretty dang empathetic. I feel like I'm not trying to dog on law enforcement, but I know they got a hard job and they got to get out there and kind of not trust people, in general because they could get them killed. But but I really appreciate that, and it really I think does help. At least the people that's going to sit for the polygraph kind of lower their nerves that this isn't a criminal interrogation type thing. So.
Right, I think so too. And I think as therapists who get protective of their clients, we want to make sure that we are placing them in not just, the most skilled, but someone who genuinely does this out of, respect for people. And I think that that's
Right.
I think that's how you operate, and I know that we feel much more comfortable because of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
So if we come up with something else, you want to do it again?
I'm happy. Anytime.
All right, man.
All right.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it so much.
All right, we'll see everybody next time.
Thank you.